Hello, good afternoon, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. This is Peter from AddShoppers, and today we are going to be talking about how to build your brand with content marketing. We'll be joined by US Patriot Tactical. Today, here are your presenters. My name, again, is Peter Messmer. I am the Director of Growth here at AddShoppers, so I will be presenting today. And joining me today is Tiffany Frey. She is the Director of E-commerce Marketing at US Patriot Tactical. She's got around 20 years of marketing experience, and she's been her current role for about 4 years. So really excited to be joined by her today. Couple housekeeping notes before we get into the agenda. So one of the biggest questions that we always get is, A, will this be recorded? And B, if so, when can I expect to receive it? So to answer that question up front, the answer is yes, it will be recorded, and you should expect this by tomorrow. In your inbox, you will get a copy of the slides and a copy of the video recording. Also, a couple handouts side of GoToWebinar. So if you go into your control panel at the bottom, there should be a little tab that says Handouts. Expand that if it isn't already, and there's a white paper in there on SEO strategies from us. And we will be adding one shortly from Tiffany at US Patriot Tactical, an infographic for you guys. So stay tuned to that. And lastly, as always, questions are welcome at any point. If you have a question on anything, drop that into the Q&A box, and we have dedicated some time at the end to handle questions. So any and all questions are welcome. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. Here is today's agenda. So we'll be starting off talking about the fundamentals of content marketing, how to measure content marketing, what are the metrics we need to be looking at, how to develop your content strategy, and some real examples. And then at the end, I will jump in and talk about how to increase content visibility and how to encourage the most engagement from your content possible. So let's go ahead and get started. Real quick, a little bit about AddShoppers. We believe that on-site marketing should be agile and powerful, as agile and powerful as email marketing. A little over 10,000 brands agree with us, and if you're interested in seeing how you can improve your on-site marketing process, just go to AddShoppers.com. Another quick freebie handout if you're interested. You can check out our 2016 e-commerce benchmark reports. Just go to AddShoppers.com/2016. Lots of interesting e-commerce tidbits that you can compare your site to. And now I'll go ahead and pass it over to Tiffany.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, everybody. Before I jump in, I'll just give you a real quick overview of who US Patriot Tactical is. We're actually the nation's largest retailer of soft goods to active duty military and law enforcement. So we provide uniforms, bags, gear, anything they need to do their job. We've got a very large online presence. Our website gets over 1 million visitors a month. We've got right now, I want to say we're up to 34 retail locations. And we are on track to add 8 more stores this year, including our first international stores in Japan and South Korea. So we're on a very rapid growth trajectory. And content marketing has played a huge role in that for us. And one of the things when I started with content marketing was it was real popular in the B2B space. It was very quickly embraced by B2B because their customers require a lot of wooing. They have a very different sales cycle than B2C. B2B usually does produce a lot of content already. They have a lot of documentation that they create for their sales teams. So it's kind of a natural fit, but in maybe the last 5 years or so, I've seen more and more B2C companies start using content marketing to drive their branding efforts, to drive customer loyalty, and then of course to drive revenue and sales. So today I'm going to focus mostly on why retailers should be using content marketing and some of the best ways that you can implement it. So according to some research that was done by the Content Marketing Institute, only 38% of B2C marketers say that their content marketing efforts are effective. And to me, that's kind of a depressing number. I think it should be a lot higher because content marketing is effective. So in my opinion, that means that 62% who are saying it's not effective, they either don't understand what it is, maybe they're measuring it wrong, or they've got the wrong expectations set for it, or they're just simply doing it wrong. So today I'm going to start first by defining content marketing, and then we'll take a look at some real life metrics from US Patriot. I'm going to show you some of the benefits that it's brought to us. And then I'm going to finish with a discussion on creating a content marketing strategy that's going to help you manage, structure, and distribute your content for the maximum results. So first of all, let's define it. So this is the definition from the Content Marketing Institute. And they say that content marketing is a strategic marketing approach focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract and retain a clearly defined audience, and ultimately to drive profitable customer action. So there's a lot packed into that definition. So I bolded some of the more important points. So the first one being strategic. So that in a nutshell means you need to have a purpose for your content, and that purpose has to fit within your larger marketing strategy. Don't just spew content out there for the sake of having content, because volume or constantly deploying it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be successful. So it has to be part of your strategy. The second word there, valuable. This is probably my number one criteria when we're talking about content. It has to have value to the person that's consuming it. And what makes it valuable? It has to answer a question, or it has to drive an emotional response. And this is why things like cat videos are really popular, or fake news. And I'm not advocating anything that you create anything fake. I'm just using an example because those types of things drive emotions. Anger maybe on one end of the spectrum, or joy and happiness on the other end. So these strong emotional responses, that's what causes content to go viral. If it's just kind of in the middle, it doesn't really evoke any kind of emotion, it is, they're not going to share it. But truly valuable content not only creates emotion, but it also creates trust. And trust is what drives your revenue. So that's the valuable piece of this. Relevant. Your content needs to be meaningful to a particular segment of your audience. So each person that visits your site is going to fit into a different visitor persona. And if you've not created your visitor personas yet, that's something that you really need to do. And we'll talk a bit about that later. But as an example, a video demonstration of how to use a product is not going to be relevant to someone who's researching maybe your company reputation. So think about who is going to consume that content and make sure it's relevant. Consistency, just make sure that you're using the same voice and the same branding, the same style, so that your content is immediately identifiable as coming from you. Again, that's that trust piece there. A clearly defined audience. So whether your audience is huge, maybe you're thinking about creating content that applies to anyone that's new to your brand. Or if the audience is tiny, maybe it's just one single person. You need to define that audience before you create your content. And by doing this, it'll keep you laser focused on what your content needs to be and what it should not be. Don't fall into the trap of trying to include everything in one piece of content, because not all content is meant for every person who comes to your site. And this kind of ties back into the relevancy piece as well. If you have a lot to say, create multiple pieces of content. Don't cram it into one thing, blow it up into multiple things. And then the last piece of this definition is action. So you want the people that are consuming your content to ultimately buy from you, and that's why we're all in business. But the content that's intended for window shoppers is going to have a different action than content that's meant for people who are ready to buy. And this is where a lot of times our expectations of content marketing and what we're measuring might not align. Don't think that every piece of content that's created is going to lead directly to a sale. That's the end action. But if they're early in the funnel, maybe the next action for that particular piece of content, the action that you should be measuring is maybe if it's been shared, or if they signed up for your newsletter, or if they clicked on a link in that content to watch a video. So think about what the logical step in this process would be for the person that's consuming the content, and ask them to take that appropriate step. Buy now isn't always the most appropriate step, and if you push it too soon, you can actually drive potential customers away. So you want to be smart with what you're measuring and what you're expecting. So it's called content marketing. Let's take a look real quick at what could be actual content. So content can literally be anything. It can be a blog. We have a blog. We do not sell anything on our blog. There might be an ad or two off on the side, but all of the articles are helpful. They're related to our industry, and they're meant to just kind of showcase our expertise in the industry and industry related topics. Videos are content marketing. This little screen grab is from our About Us video. Photos and memes, these are really popular. I mean, there's meme generators. They're real easy to create. They're great content. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So, you know, look at how you can use imagery. Downloadables. Infographics are real popular in the B2B space. Maybe not so much in B2C, but you don't have to call them infographics. This is actually a poster that we created for our customers, or for really for anyone. It's free, to how to take care of your combat boots. And it's available in a smaller size for using on your computer, and we have it available in a real high resolution size for people to print. So think about your market and think how these might be useful for them. Microsites. So we put together a microsite that explained the new Army uniform regulations. The regulations changed last year. There was a lot of confusion in our industry. A lot of the soldiers didn't know what they could wear, when things were getting phased out, who could wear what. So we put a microsite together, and the purpose of this microsite, if you're on it for a little bit, a little box will pop up and say, do you want to be informed when the new uniforms are available? So the purpose of this website is simply to gather leads. Obviously, we hope those leads turn into sales, but we have a goal for this site of a certain number of leads generated per month. We're not tracking revenue. Maybe once the uniforms are available and we start sending out emails and doing other activities, the revenue will be tracked on those, but the website, that's not the goal. Product charts, these can be used for content marketing. Content marketing is really anything except advertising, and there are actually some exceptions to that, and then product pages. I don't consider product pages to be advertising or to be content marketing, because their direct purpose is to sell, and content marketing has to have a value to the consumer. And product pages often don't. They're just strictly product information. There's not anything additional there. Advertising a lot of times is not content marketing, but I have seen some exceptions. I actually saw a Home Depot commercial the other day on how to paint your living room, like, you know, showing you how to take things off, and they weren't advertising anything specific. They didn't mention any products. Of course, there were product shots. You could see the cans of paint and the tape, but they weren't mentioning product names. They weren't promoting a Mother's Day sale, nothing like that. It was just how to paint your living room. So that type of an ad is content marketing, but it's not something that most of us would do. But no matter what you're creating, you want it to drive an emotional response, because emotions are what create the action. So there's two emotions that we as retailers should be focusing on. The first one is excitement. Excitement is a great emotion. It's a very positive emotion, and you can drive excitement with things like a long anticipated product release, or if something innovative has just come out, something groundbreaking. I swear a day after the iPhone 7 came out, we were seeing iPhone 8 sneak peeks. So there's a lot of industries where there is that ability to create excitement. The other emotion that I prefer to focus on is pain relief. I think that relief is actually a much bigger driver of trust than excitement when it comes to retail. And pain relief comes around the fact that customers have questions when they're researching products and researching who to buy from. They have a lot of questions, and those questions create internal anxiety. And you can create content that's going to relieve their anxiety. So the questions that they have are things like how to do something, right? How to use a product. Makeup videos and hair videos are really popular. And they answer those types of questions. How do I do this? How to assemble something? So pain relief is something that I would focus on when you're thinking about creating your content. And then once you evoke these emotions, the best response that you could get from the person consuming your content is actually not a sale. And this is something that some people disagree with me, but I believe the best response to your content is a share. The best content out there is going to turn your fans and your customers into evangelists. And evangelists are the ones that share your content, and shared content is highly trusted. Nielsen did a poll last year, and they found out that 83% of consumers trust the recommendations of their friends and family. So you want to shoot for the share, not the sale. One share is going to equal more than one sale. And not only are people the ones that trust shares, but so does Google. So when content gets shared, even if it's in a no-follow situation like Facebook, Google still gets signals from Facebook. So, and I'll show you in a minute how content marketing can help with SEO and with traffic. So shoot for the share because it will drive sales. So you know that eventually you're going to have to answer the question, probably coming from your boss, is content marketing working? So you need to regularly monitor the health of your content marketing program. What's hot, what's not, where can you push more, what should you stop doing? You need to look at the KPIs for each piece of content. So when you're developing content, think about what is the goal for this specific piece of content. Is it to get newsletter signups? Is it to get people to share the article? Is it to get them to watch the video? What is the goal for that? Measure those goals. And if you find that that content is doing something else, either reevaluate your goal or change the content. Maybe you need to make your call to action more obvious, or rearrange the page or something so that you meet your goal. But then you also need to take a more 30,000-foot view of how your program is working overall. So I'm going to show you some of the numbers here, some of the benefits that we've seen from content marketing. Okay, so all these numbers that I'm going to show you, these come from having our blog. We started blogging in January of 2014. So we've got just over 3 years under our belt of our blog. A lot of trial and error, a lot of testing. But over the last year or so, we've really started to see it mature, and we're having some really strong results from it. So first thing I'm going to talk about is SEO. This is usually an important facet for any marketing department, is how are we performing on the search engines. So when we started the blog, we ranked for about 3,800 keywords on our website, not the blog site, but our actual website. And then at the end of the year, in December, we ranked for about 6,800. So we almost doubled the number of keywords that we ranked for, which was pretty impressive. After 3 years of blogging now, we rank for over 60,000 keywords, and 11,000 of those are just on page 1. So the blog is full of great keywords, both from our articles and from the comments that are being left. And there are a ton of really strong third-party backlinks coming to the site and coming to the blog, which are helping our ranking. We had a terrible toxic link profile before we started the blog. And while we haven't been able to remove a lot of those toxic links, we've been able to just completely obliterate them with good links. So content marketing can help with your SEO. All right, the next piece here is traffic. So this was our traffic on our website. We started the blog in January, and you see this lift in June, July. We started about 6 months after we had a noticeable lift. This is one of the benefits of ranking for more keywords. You're going to get more traffic. And then this is where we are today. So significant growth. What's really interesting about this is July, August, and September are our slowest months of the year, and November and December are also pretty slow for us traditionally. We are not a back to school or holiday gift item kind of company. So those markets are usually slower for us. And we actually started to grow in the summer. And then we had, some of our best months during the holiday season. So I think this bar didn't show up all the way because it's supposed to be out here. So our traffic now is quite a bit higher. So content marketing is helping us with traffic. Our list growth, our email list. So the first year went up 145%, and today we're over double the number of people on our list than we were 2 years ago. So this allows us to communicate with more people, and this is all coming from the blog. This is kind of a fun one, time to second purchase. So this graphic isn't real super clear, but a non-blog visitor takes them 94 days to make their second purchase. But someone who's visited the blog, it only takes them 72 days. And this is where the trust piece of content marketing comes in. So granted, it does take more visits before a blog visitor makes their first purchase. Average 2.7 visits versus 1 visit. But if you think about their journey, that makes sense. People who come to the blog aren't necessarily ready to purchase. They might be reading an article on the Army's new tattoo regulations, or one of our writers' opinions on interstate gun laws. So they're not in the frame of mind to buy when they find our blog. But they like what they read, they like who we are, they bookmark the blog, and we start to generate trust. So then when they finally read maybe one of our product reviews or see an ad and they recognize our name, we get the sale, our competitors don't. And then we get their second purchase much more quickly. Average order value. So our blog visitors, their first order averages 8% less than someone who does not visit the blog. So that's a little bit of a disappointing statistic, but that's something that you can work with. We see that and we're like, okay, why? What's influencing them to spend less money? What products are they researching that they're landing on the blog first? Are they lower priced items? So this is information you can use to improve what you're doing. However, their lifetime value is 18% higher. So even though their first purchase is smaller, we are getting them on their second, third, and fourth purchases to spend more money. So this is obviously a good thing. And then finally, let's look at revenue. Everyone always asks about revenue. So we track people whose very first touch is the blog. And in the second full year of the blog's life, those people were 5% of our revenue. So that means they had not gone to the store first. The first encounter they had with us was on the blog. And about 90% of our blog traffic comes from social media, where our articles are getting shared a lot. We do not advertise on Facebook. We don't do any social media advertising. So all of those shares and all of the SEO work that we've done, that's all bringing people to the blog first and then driving 5% of our revenue. So these are some of the metrics showing some of the benefits that we've seen from content marketing. These are more of that high level view, that 30,000 foot view, and these are the numbers that you'll report on most likely. But again, don't forget to look at the individual trees in the forest. You know, you want to look at the individual pieces of content, monitor how those are performing as well. And then it all rolls up into these bigger buckets of numbers that you're going to look at. So, so define content marketing. I've shown you some of the benefits that we've seen, and now let's take a look at generating a good content strategy. So I have put together something I call the content marketing pyramid, and I've actually shared this in an infographic. It'll have a little more detailed on the slides, and if you want that, feel free to ask for it. I think it might even be in the file sharing area, but this will be available to you if you'd like it. So let's start with the base down here. The base of your pyramid is your strategy. So the very first thing that you need to do before you even start thinking about content is to write your mission statement. Why are you doing this? And how will it benefit the people coming to your website? Do not write down how it's going to benefit you. Write down how it will benefit them. And that will help to keep you on track as you assemble and you distribute your content. The second part of a good strategy is understanding who your visitors are. You need to develop your visitor personas. And then create your content for each of those personas. And you want to aim your content at moving them down the funnel by creating trust and exposing them to your company and your products. But you need to define your visitor personas. And you can define those on a lot of different things. Their demographics, like their age or their gender, or maybe even their location. If you've got people in different parts of the country that may be experiencing different weather, you know, you can put your content out based on location. Their site behavior. What pages are they looking at on your website? What search terms are they using? Did they abandon a cart? Are they just price checking? Did they look at your return policy? You know, what are they doing on your site? That's part of that persona. And then where are they in the funnel? Are they early research? Are they price comparing? Are they looking into company reliability or product reviews? Or have they purchased? Are they already at the end of the funnel? So use those things to define your visitor personas. And then the last piece of the strategy puzzle is establishing a publishing calendar. And this keeps you on track. It really does. Calendar out the holidays, any type of seasonal content that you want to create, pencil in anticipated new product releases, put everything on the calendar that you know of, everything you can think of, and then mix in other content. You know, I showed you a lot of different types of content that you can create, blog posts, videos, infographics. You can even share the same exact information in multiple formats. Make an infographic explaining something, make a video explaining the same thing, and then put together a meme that promotes a link to your video, you know, and then have an article on your blog, and then share that in an email. So put all these different things together because people like to consume different types of content. Not everyone's going to want to watch a video. All right, so the next part of the pyramid here is your content itself. And I think a lot of times this is the thing that keeps marketers up at night is what are we going to write about? the topics. But it's actually kind of easier than you think. We talked earlier about creating emotion with content. A huge resource that you have people in your company that are providing pain relief all the time, and that's your customer service team. So one exercise that I always recommend is get your team together, have them look through their sent emails and look for those detailed answers that they find themselves repeating over and over. When people call in or email in and say, hey, how do I do this? Or I just bought this product, I don't understand this. When you find them answering that question over and over, you've got content. There might be an obscure question, something strange that might spark a conversation or just a neat idea. So talk to your customer service team. They're a great source for content ideas. Your writers, that's the second piece of this. And then this is kind of, after people figure out what they're gonna write, then they have this inevitable freak out of who's gonna write this, oh my gosh. That is really a challenge. You have to develop a reliable and reputable stable of content creators. And you want them to preferably be subject matter experts or recognizable faces in your industry. Using people at your company, your team members or your management, those are good people to tap, but it's even better if you use people like everyday Joe that's just like your customer, or the superhero Jane who's figured something out and wants to share. Again, going back to the makeup videos, these are just ordinary women a lot of times that are demonstrating makeup techniques, and then they look like a supermodel at the end. So those types of things can really be helpful for people. So ask your customers. Customers are usually very happy to write for you or to provide content, particularly if you give them an incentive to do so. Mine your database for those evangelists. Those are people who tag you in their posts, or people who are sharing your posts, and then when they share it, you can read what they write a lot of times as long as their page isn't private. See what they say. If they say, hey, I have this product and I love it, reach out to them and say, hey, would you mind writing a review for us? So customers are great to write. You can also outsource to a content writing company. You want to be careful there. Just make sure that the writers are experienced in your industry. A lot of times these content writing companies just hire people, as long as they can write a sentence, they hire them. So they'll research a topic and then write on it, but they may not have actual expertise and insight. So if you're going to hire an outside writer, try to find one that knows what they're talking about. Because in my opinion, no content is better than poor content. And then the last part of your content considerations in this pyramid here is some kind of content management system. There's a lot of platforms out there. If you're blogging, WordPress, movable type. If you have a very well-rounded, robust content marketing program, you could look at a publisher like PowerPost. You could even use something like Microsoft Excel. Whatever you use, though, it just needs to be able to keep you organized, facilitate communication between you and your content creators, and allow for fast and easy publishing. So do some research on content marketing systems. All right, the third tier here of the pyramid is your structure. And this is the actual structure of your content. This can make or break your content in terms of search engines, shareability, and stickiness. So do people save it? Do they share it? Does Google like it? Do people link to it? All of these things are important. So if it's a blog post or something on your website, make sure you've got it optimized. So don't forget, your keywords. Don't make sure the URL is search engine friendly. Make sure you've got your H1 tags in there, internal links, things like that. Your titles and your images, Your titles need to be short and attention grabbing. Don't make your titles really super long. It's kind of the same rule of thumb as email. You want the title to be short and to the point. And do not fall into this trend I see of using kind of misleading titles to generate excitement. And then when people get to the content, they're disappointed. Google does not like people who click the back button quickly. So you'll hurt yourself in the end if you use these sensational titles. Make sure they're truthful and to the point. And then your images, you also want to have good names for your images and for your video. Have good file names. Make sure if the images and video are on your website that you've got your alt tags and your other your descriptions and things like that are SEO friendly. And then the last piece of your structure is your call to action. So on most of your content, you want to think about what you're going to ask for. Are you going to ask them to comment or share? Are you going to tell them to go to another page to get more info? Are you going to tell them to download? Are you going to tell them to buy? Whatever that call to action is, again, make sure it's related to your content and it's appropriate, but do not forget to include it, because if you don't ask, a lot of times you don't get. Then the top of the pyramid here is your distribution, and this is going to tie into AddShoppers because they really help you get your content exposed. But if you are thinking about sharing your content outside of your website, you need to think about who the content's for, when you want to share it, and where. So let's first talk about who. Who's your target audience for this content? We talked about personas. You need to be real specific. And then choose your keywords and your tags that are going to resonate with those personas. You need to put your content then where they're going to find it at the time that they're likely to be there. So just to give you an example, we've got different personas on our website. We have Military Mike. Military Mike is 18 to 25 years old, male, uses Instagram, and is online between midnight and 4 a.m. Eastern time. Civilian Sam, he's a Googler. He finds our blog through Google, uses Twitter, and is online on the weekends. So the content that we create for Mike, it wouldn't make any sense for us to put it on Twitter and post it on Saturday morning because Mike's not going to see it. We need to put it on Instagram. That means Mike is probably more receptive to photos, short video clips, memes, things like that. So think about who you're creating the content for, and then think about where you're going to reach them if they're not already on your site. And then after you do all this, you need to measure, rinse, and repeat. All right, so that is my part of the presentation. I'll turn it back over to Peter.
All right, thanks, Tiffany. That was awesome. Who's ready to go bang out some content? So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I'm going to start basically, we're going to look at a lot of different things, but I'm going to start off basically breaking down kind of content marketing and e-commerce and the combination, the intersection of the two. Another way to look at it and kind of figure out where the meeting point between the two needs to happen. And then we'll also look at things like how to distribute what Tiffany was just talking about, how to really distribute your content, make the most of it, especially thinking about the e-commerce experience as well. So yeah, got a lot of stuff planned for you guys. So to start off, kind of a high-level overview of what's changed in commerce, not just e-commerce, but commerce regarding not just content marketing, but all content marketing. So kind of bird's eye view here, but back in the 70s for this brand, we'll be using a couple brands just to use as an example with also some results. But for Williams-Sonoma, familiar brand that most of us recognize, back in the 70s, their entire marketing strategy, or most of it, was all done through a catalog. So they'd send out the catalogs This was their content marketing. This was their product marketing. This was also their order taking mechanism, all kind of rolled into one. In 2017, you pull up your smartphone, you go to williamsonoma.com. Not much actually seems to have changed if you think about it. There's your all in their website. There's the content marketing. There's the product marketing. There's the order taking mechanism, all in one. So on one hand, or on one view, seems like not much has changed, but on the other hand, a lot has changed. So some of the things that I think are really important to think about that have changed are things like tracking. This is much more trackable. If you were to go back in time to the 1970s and tell all the catalog marketers that you could tell them the number of page views that every recipient actually looked at, you'd blow their mind. Other things that have changed, it's a lot more, you can build much more engaging experiences. So I'll pull up some examples of that. And really those are the main two. And then a big third would be the fact of all things smartphones. So these things aren't delivered. You're on somebody's smartphone for the most part. Most people, we see most of our clients get more than 50% of their traffic from a mobile device. So this is also the small form is something to definitely think about. But that's kind of an introduction to some of the topics that I want to talk about. Here's an example of something that's really engaging as far as kind of a meld between content and e-commerce. Some of the really cool things you can do on the more cutting edge, some of the more forward-thinking brands. So in this example, Ted Baker has a 360-degree video from the spring 27 collection campaign, where it's like when you get the slides tomorrow, just jump into the slide and click that shop the video button at the bottom and check it out. It's really the best way to look at it. But it'll take you to like a video, and it's, like they say, 360 degrees. You can move the mouse, look around, and then anything that you find interesting, you can click on it and then add any of those products to your bag and check out. A really cool way to combine content, as in this, it's like they set it up as like the Baker house, and then commerce where you can actually shop from within the house. So one interesting example there, showing really what's possible now that you couldn't fit into a catalog 40 years ago. And then also, here's another example, kind of your more classic content marketing library example. So REI builds out a ton of articles and checklists and just lots of content on their site. This obviously pulls in lots of search engine traffic, and also I would imagine gets a good number of shares as well. So here's another example. And the one thing that this brings us to, especially keeping in mind smartphones and the tracking that we are now capable of, is Micromoments. So this is the concept that maybe some of you guys are familiar with. It was really popularized by Google. They're the ones that have really kind of built this out and created definitions for it. Tiffany actually touched on this a little bit earlier. So some of your I want to know moments, or I want to do moments, or I want to buy moments. So when thinking about content marketing, this has a really strong tie-in. So if you were thinking, so let me back up. So what's a micromoment? So this is like a little moment, like I want to know this moment, or I want to do this moment, that shows some kind of an intent, but it's not necessarily making a purchase. Whereas the purchase is like the moment. Anything leading up to it is the micro moment. So the reason that these are important is because a lot of the more forward-thinking brands have shifted over to measuring micro moments primarily on mobile versus just direct purchases. And the reason for that is a lot of brands and retailers have recognized that people aren't using their smartphones to shop. They're using their smartphones to research. They're trying to maybe plan their next purchase, or they're trying to at least begin the process of researching a major purchase where they just want to see what's out there. So they'll pull up their phone, look at what's out there, see what brands come up, and then maybe once they've learned a little bit, then they'll complete a purchase on the desktop. Now, the tie-in with content marketing is when people are completing these micro moments, what they're doing is they're researching. And what are they using to research? It's content. So if someone searches for something like I need knives. I'm just going to run through these examples. They're looking for a product. That's a micro moment. So do you have content that shows up for I need quality knives? Or on the very or the second from the right. So this is like a cooking technique, braising pork using a cast iron skillet. That's someone who's saying, I want to know how to do this. Do you have content that's going to answer that I want to know question? So this is the tie-in between micro moments and content, and then after someone's consumed some of that content and they're ready to buy, the tie-in between content and actually buying something. So a couple examples, again, we're using Williams-Sonoma as an example here. They actually pop up in all of these examples. So do you think they're getting traffic and revenue from that? I'll just leave that one up to you. It should be obvious. But anyway, so here are the results that they've actually seen from shifting to this strategy where rather than just trying to make direct sales on mobile, they've started using content. They've started pushing that content to all the channels that they can, and they've started primarily measuring micro moments rather than just sales and revenue. So they saw obviously good results here: 70% increase in mobile sales, 51% increase in e-commerce sales overall, and then they're actually getting 20% more for every dollar that they spend on ads. So definitely some interesting things there when you just start shifting to building out your content marketing ecosystem. Next up, I'm going to show you guys some actual AddShoppers client examples of ways that they've taken the content that they already have and used it to make their e-commerce site work even harder. So this is going to be things that are going to come into play once you have really strong content. How can you get the most of it? And we'll show a couple examples here. So here's an example where Gentleman's Box, this brand, they had a lot of YouTube videos, and that was actually their highest performing channel. But the problem with having YouTube videos that perform well is that they're only on YouTube. Once somebody's on the website, or maybe someone that comes to the website and hasn't seen their YouTube videos yet, they don't get the benefit of all of those YouTube videos. So what they actually did is they took some of their highest performing videos and they posted those onto their actual e-commerce site using the AddShoppers portal. So in the screenshot example here, here's one of their member reviews. So obviously positive reviews and testimonials and things like that are really powerful, even much more so in a video. So this is definitely something that helps them convert their visitors at a higher rate once they've made it back to the e-commerce site. So again, intersection here between content and commerce. So here's a actual live real example of that. Another one, this is actually a really simple campaign that actually had big results. So sometimes simple things yield the best campaign or the best results. So Zero Shoes, we tested on they were running an abandonment pop-up. So when someone was running or someone was leaving the website, there was a campaign that was triggered to them right before they left. Previously, they were running just a standard, like enter your email and get 10% off or something like that. We A/B tested that versus just a simple, which Zero Shoes are right for me. Try the Zero Shoe Finder, and then you just click on that button and it takes you to the little table that you see in the big screenshot on the right. So all this is just a comparison table between all of the shoes that they offer. So content doesn't always have to be like long form blog content or videos. Even something like a tool like this can be considered good content that also converts. So things like calculators or things like maybe interactive tools, those also qualify as content that you can use in your marketing effort. So this converted higher actually than just the standard coupon offer. So the hypothesis actually to back up was that people were a little bit confused when they were leaving the site about what exactly they should be buying. Too many choices. So showing that this campaign here that answers that question was really what made the difference. So cool example right there. And then the third example that I have is from another client of ours, NonLine Apparel. And if you just kind of look through the example on the left, you'll see a lot of content integrated into their AddShoppers portal. So things like biographies of their veteran of the month and that veteran's favorite products. They also have videos and our story campaigns integrated into the site. And as a result of all that, they've seen their conversion rates 36% higher than average. So next up, I'm going to present to you guys two different ways to basically, two different ways to approach your content marketing. And also your offers when you begin to tie in like offers for e-commerce. So the first example is showing your offers first. So in this approach, we're actually going to, this is more of a traditional e-commerce focused approach. So we're going to take things, while people are on the site, we're going to first show them the offers. So here are your, enter your email to get X off offers. Or in this example that's on the screen, clearance up to 75% off. So all of these traditional, more sales-based offers, you're going to show them first. And then after they've seen that offer and maybe interacted with it, then we can show them campaigns that pull in content. So things like the Instagram campaign that you see in this screenshot. So that just pulls in their Instagram feed. Or things like the Guardians of the Galaxy movie trailer. So in this example, again, it's offers first to get somebody's interest, or maybe you're more interested in capturing, email addresses above anything else, building the list. But then you're using the content to that engaged audience that completes those offers, and you're using the content to build that branding in each consumer's mind. That's going to build that trust factor that Tiffany talked about. Second way that you can do this is basically the opposite. So we'll show the content first that builds trust and gets engagement, and then once somebody's engaged, then we can start, carefully layering in some of the more promotional offers. So, in this example, they engage visitors with an About Us video. They also have campaigns about their cause. They do some charitable causes. So engage people with those campaigns first, and then once somebody's kind of shown them that they're engaged and they're shopping, then we can start adding in, enter your email for a chance to win, or share out for 10% off, or something like that. So two different ways to approach it. Which one is right? Well, think about which one is best for your brand, which one aligns with the content marketing strategy that you've already built out, and also it's always worth testing one approach versus the other and just seeing which one works better. Although lastly, I'll also throw this one in here. You can kind of do the same thing at the same time if you want to. So here's actually an example going back to NonLine, where they have a 3-minute video that builds trust in their brand. And then directly below that is their email subscription where you can sign up for 10% off. So you can also do something like this to kind of hit on both at the same time if that is something you want to try and it ends up working out for you numbers wise. And then lastly, I want to talk about sharing. So here at AddShoppers, one of the things that we've always specialized or been fairly strong in is sharing and tying in the social component. So a couple examples here of how you can maximize the sharing on not just your content, but actually all of your products too. But obviously it definitely works well for content here. So in this example, this is a simple, what we call social rewards campaign. So the way this works is you have a piece of content or a product or something, and you say to your visitor or your customer, hey, if you share this out, we will give you a coupon off your next purchase immediately after sharing, or something like that. So this is an example of a $5 off purchase of 50 or more campaign, where if I'm on this site, this is Pure Cosmetics, and I share out the page or product or blog post, video, whatever that I'm on, immediately after sharing, I'll get that $5 off coupon code that I can use when I'm checking out on the site. So that's a really good way to increase sharing. Usually you can see somewhere between a 2 to 3x increase in sharing if you have a strong offer. So definitely powerful for getting more shares out there. Another thing that gets tons of sharing is contests or giveaways that involve sharing somehow in the giveaway. So traditionally, what we like to do is we'll run campaigns where the first step of the contest is to enter your email, and that gets you entered so that A, you capture their email address, B, you also know what email to send the prize to if someone for the winner. And then step number 2 is to share out the contest or giveaway itself for an extra entry. And this generates not just tons of sharing, but also lots of email captures as well. As it says here, we've actually seen email capture rates north of 40% of total traffic with a campaign like this running. So really powerful for that, but these also get tons of sharing as well. And during the duration of a giveaway like this, you'll likely see maybe 5-10 times more sharing than you normally get. So these can be super powerful as well. Here's another example, kind of an interesting example of a social contest if you want to make it a little bit more robust. In this example, we actually had people, they would upload a photo and then share out the photo, and then you could vote by sharing each photo. So interesting campaign there. Another example of the social contest. And then lastly, last thing that I want to touch on, again, speaking of sharing, is user-generated content. So this is always good for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously you don't have to do anything to create the content. It's being provided to you by your customers. Obviously, social proof and trust, again, coming in here. The more user-generated content you can show on your site, the more trust it builds when people can see that people just like them are shopping and loving your products. So the more user-generated content you can get, the better. A couple examples here. Traditionally, with more of the visual-based brands, they'll have a upload a photo type of thing, which you can see here on the left, and then those get curated and displayed in a visual gallery on the site. So that's typically what most user-generated content campaigns look like, although I suppose there's other ways to do it, but that's really what we see the most. And with that, that's really everything that I have for you guys. So right now we will have some time for Q&A. If you have any questions that you have not put in yet, make sure to do that. And I will go ahead and start pulling in the questions. So I'll give you guys a couple seconds to submit any other questions. Again, while I'm kind of pulling these together, you'll see our contact information, websites there on the screen. So if you have any questions for either of us, feel free to reach out. We would love to hear from you. And we'll go ahead and run through the questions here. So the first question that we have is, what kind of balance is preferable for user-generated content versus company-created content versus content curation? That's a good question. Tiffany, I'll let you tackle that one first, if you don't mind.
Oh, well, I think it depends a lot on your industry and your users. Every industry is going to be different, and I'm a big advocate of testing, but I would say that probably 25% of your content to be user generated would be a good goal to shoot for. If you find that it's really driving more revenue than your expert created content, then you can always increase that. The quality of the content is also going to impact that. So you don't want things that just aren't compelling, that don't drive emotion, that have misspellings, anything that's going to reflect poorly on you. But I think user-generated content a lot of times is the hardest to get. So that's actually an initiative on our website for next year, is to start doing that, because it does have an impact. But I would try going for about 25% and just seeing how it works.
Cool. Yeah, I would also say is if your user-generated content is strong, like people are actually giving you good stuff, it's kind of a thing where like you can't have too much of it, especially if it's like testimonials. People are like, oh, I love this. Like you can never have too many people saying they love you. Cool. Anyway, next up here. So is there a preferred length for video content? What tends to perform the best? I don't really have too much data on that because we don't really do too many videos, just things like webinars. Do you have any input on that, Tiffany?
Well, again, it goes back to your audience and what their tolerance is. And whenever I have a question like this, I always, my instinct is to just test different things. So with our audience, because of who our audience is, again, it's that military mic on Instagram, we have found that really short, under 30-second videos work best. Those types of videos are not very useful when it comes to like a how-to. But our industry really doesn't need a lot of the how-to stuff. So it really just depends what you're creating and what you find is working. So if you've got a couple videos that are real short, a couple that are real long, look at how they're performing and just test out different things. But I think if it's just a commercial that you're kind of putting together, like I mentioned earlier, that Home Depot commercial on how to paint your living room, if it's something you can do real quick, get your point across, make it as short as you can. I'd also say too, to try to create videos that don't need any sound, because people watch these on their phones a lot of times, and they will have their volume shut off because they don't want to disturb the people around them. So the video has to be powerful and stand on its own without any audio. I mean, you can put audio in it, a music track or something, but ideally you want the video to get your point across without any audio.
Cool. Next question is about visitor personas here. So how many different visitor personas should you target? And like what is too many? Should you start out with just one and add on? What's your take on that, Tiffany?
I think most of the sites I've worked on, we put together 4 to 5 on average. It really takes a lot of number crunching, and you have to look at the data from all different angles and really just get a good idea of who's coming to your site. If you're, let's just say you're a clothing retailer, maybe you want to first start with gender and split up male and female. And then maybe from there you want to split off by age. And then from there you want to split off by location. And then from there split off by their browsing habits on your site. And from there you can maybe come up with 4 or 5 of your top visitor personas. You can't make a persona for every person that comes to your site, but you want to find a good strong group that represents the majority of your traffic.
Cool, sounds good. Yeah, so let's see, looks like just one more question here. So if you guys have anything else, make sure to get that in now before we wrap up. But yeah, the last question here is, what's a good real example of emotional content? So I'll just throw in there, I don't know if it's really emotional, but obviously the key point with emotional content was that it gets a lot of shares. And I can share for us that 2016 report that I shared at the very beginning, AddShoppers.com/2016, got a lot of shares. So pretty much all of our annual breakdowns like that get a lot of shares. So that's one example, at least from our side. Do you have any good example, maybe 1 or 2 good examples, Tiffany?
Well, one that comes to mind, that was real powerful after 9/11, and we see it floating around on Facebook, especially when 9/11 comes back around every year, was a full-page ad placed in the New York Times of a drawing of the Statue of Liberty rolling up her sleeves. That ad that did not sell anything, but it was extremely powerful, and that drove a really strong emotional response, and it is still being shared this many years later. So when you're thinking about creating emotions, it's a huge spectrum. It's from anger and hatred all the way to ecstasy and everything in between. And you can create content that is intentionally divisive. If there's something in your industry, if there's a big controversy in your industry, one of the things we do occasionally is we'll post something that insults one of the military branches. You know, we'll post something about how, you know, the Air Force, they're all flyboys, or, you know, the Army, you know, they're all in the sand or something. You know, somebody will make a funny meme and we'll share it, and oh my gosh, we get, you know, we're a military website, so we get F-bombs dropped on our Facebook page all the time. We get, you know, they start fights on our Facebook page, but that's how the military is. There's a lot of that, they're very loyal to their branch. There's a lot of this, you know, kind of friendly teasing, but there's passion behind it. So we use that to kind of drive emotions. So those are the types of things. You want to be careful, obviously, if you're using negative emotions. You don't want to overdo it. On the positive side, you know, that's probably a lot easier to do, to share things that make your customers really happy, you know, that is related to your industry. You know, if you're this time of year, if you're a landscaping company or a pool company, you've got all kinds of things that can make people happy, with flowers blooming and, you know, baby birds and stuff. So think about your industry and think about popular topics or things that people in your industry gravitate towards, and just use those, pull some emotions out of those and use them.
Cool. Awesome. So that is it for the questions. So again, thanks everybody for showing up. If you missed the first couple minutes, this is being recorded and you will get the recording and the slides by tomorrow. And again, our contact information is there on the slide that you are looking at right now, if you ever want to have any questions or just want to get in touch. And that is everything on our end. Big thanks to Tiffany for joining the webinar with us today. And that's about it. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks.